So it'd be great to just start with some introductions to our panelists. I'm Iziah Thompson from Community Service Society.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Nellis, Head of Initiative.
Hey, Karen Blondo, Red Oak West and long-term resident of Red Oak.
I'm with Stevens Bay. I'm a research coordinator with Center for Justice Innovation.
So I think starting with when the report came out, we can't really ever avoid conversations about the pandemic during this time. It impacted everything that we do think about. Generally, the nation has rebounded from pandemic job loss. Jobs are back up, and this is pretty true for New York. Though we did find when it came to Black unemployment, post-pandemic, that was at 12.2%, while white unemployment was at 1.3%. Really startling difference. I think we thinking that there's something to do with job type and certain jobs haven't come back. The city has an increased amount of accommodations and entertainment industry. But while working on the report, we were really shocked to find that NYCHA residents were really well represented across the labor market in different jobs. But for some reason, Black men in NYCHA were only really overwhelmingly in the private sector, really kept out of nonprofit and government jobs. I think so we wanted to start with that. Really, what in your experience sort of explain something like this that you find in is there any answers to why something like this would be just from like a wider view? Nellis, did you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I think, as we're thinking about like private and public sectors, the first thing that comes to mind is the requirements and the expectations. Just bottom line, right? Like it's easier for someone to invest themselves in the private sector because there's less scrutiny, right? There's less expectations, or there may be some oversight. Where you have like public sectors, there's so much demand and there's so much expectation there of the employees, regardless of circumstances, even though they're the talent. And then when you're looking at particularly men of color, right? Black people, Black males, there's, already so much, bigotry or assumptions made already. So it's much easier to, go into the private sector, maybe invest in starting your own ventures. Does anybody want to?
So I definitely agree with Nellis. I also say that it goes back to the crime bill of 1994, when public housing, young people were being charged with zero tolerance. And, the word predator came up and all those words. Well, there were policies that are still in effect in public housing. And then I think it's also about opportunity, what you see. So a lot of times we fed like, you could become a TikTok star or a basketball player, and everybody want to do that. But we weren't taught about vocation in school as a backup plan. Whether that vocation be carpentry or electrician. When I think back to the Tuskegee Institute, that's the type of model we need for public housing residents if we really serious about getting them off the ground. And that's why we had that space, and that was the way the whole program went. So I feel like we need to give, we have to look back generationally to what's bothering mothers like me who have children in their 30s, who are now the parents who don't have these jobs or aren't on lease and stuff like that. And then to the younger generation to start making sure we put those things in their path as opportunities through mentorship, through fellowships, and with our own faces. It makes a big difference when you see a Black doctor. you might say something to a Black doctor I wouldn't say to someone else. And it's just that, cultural. It's cultural, So first, we have to see ourselves in those same positions. And we have the space and the intelligence to do it, but I think Black people stay disorientated a lot and not given the right information to just make that choice.
For this one, speaking like from our own experience, and also just knowing history in America, the Black history, right? Just looking at those historical facts and looking at today, like those things that were put in place, those marginalized areas, the lack of education. And if we do want to talk about education, can we even afford that, knowing the poverty rates and then how much whites and Blacks, that the pay scale is, right? So I think when you add all that up, you understand where we at today, right? And I like this a lot because it starts the conversation, right? To take control of that narrative and then looking at our own young folks as not what that narrative is. It's criminalizing them, or why are you doing this way? Or why are you doing this and why you're not doing what society says you should be doing and whatnot, but not understanding those challenges and those obstacles that lay before them. And I believe like in each generations, how America is set up, it targets that youth, right? So if we all are talking about this such as a report, it starts the conversation to start looking at this thing and a timeline effect, historical way, where we can engage that. And also bringing in our young people.
Yeah.
Looking at the crowd here. I only see like two of my bros here, right here. And these are the young men that we're talking about, right? So bringing them more in the room and bringing them and having them be part of the conversation and hearing what they got to say, because they're dealing with it presently.
Yeah, those are all great answers. I think, I feel like we already started to dig into some of the sort of problems. There's also, the city has a host of solutions that probably equal the number of problems, some working, maybe some not working. One of them we ran into was the Summer Youth Employment Program, the SYEP, which, it's talked about a lot. Found that it seemed that NYCHA residents who applied, the youth, about 50% of them who applied actually got into the program. Seemed like a bit of a policy failure if, the program is supposed to do what its mission is. I mean, that just means that that's half those applicants who, didn't get financial counseling, didn't get college readiness programming, didn't have that job and that experience. So I'm wondering, you, as someone who worked with it, why would the employment rate be so low, and sort of what should we maybe think about doing when it comes to that program?
Yeah, this is an interesting dilemma, right? Because as we think about career exploration for everyone, right? You can all think about, like in this room, your first experience with working, right? And if you come from, an underserved community, right, like Red Hook, the first thing that comes to mind is your SYEP job, right? And for some of us, and I know I'm definitely included in that, I've never worked a summer youth job. I've applied, so it's disheartening to hear, right, that even now in this day, there's still, young Black males being denied this opportunity. So, the second part to that, to me, is like to think about, schools and how they're severely underfunded, right? And I think that, our talent, right, our community, our residents, they can see that it's problematic when, if you have a child, it's, reality is that your child is probably sitting in a physical same seat that you've sat in, right, when you were in that school. and reading the same textbooks that you read. So when you think about, you know, it's like an understatement to say under-resourced. It's non-existent. And I think that when youth, right, young Black males, when they see that, when they come against that, there's like an apathetic approach. Because it's like, oh, this is another reminder, a subtle reminder that I don't matter enough, right? And, you know, it seems that it's very easy to blame what's in front of you, right? Oh, our child doesn't care, right? My local officials doesn't care, my school doesn't care. And the problem is much bigger than one face.
So, I think that also what it is that, elected officials don't really see the other part about being, a young person and how the policies affect them, you know, so, when you try to get a summer job, in New York, you might, have a higher income than what people have in the South. But if HUD is setting the bar, cost burden in New York versus cost burden somewhere else is different. So a lot of people might not want to use that opportunity. Number one, their family might be misinformed that their rent is gonna go up. It's a lot of different factors with public housing that people feel over-policied. So they don't take those jobs, you know.
Again, from my experience, I'm gonna speak from privately from the point of like why the enrollment so low. I think just understanding like the pandemic, right? And what was going on at that time and understanding like our generation of youth and that mindset of tech savvy, they really are. When we're talking about the pandemic, and NYCHA industries, period, how that changed how they view money, meaning that they had access to be getting a certain amount of money. I'm talking about, you're talking about $30,000. You got kids coming down the block, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, brand new cars and whatnot. And this went on for a 2-year period, almost a 3-year period, where you had these young men providing for their families through this way. And we know that big businesses was doing it at the same time as well.
Yeah.
But
That's a good point.
what me and my boss talk about a lot is like, we wish we had data on that time. Because a lot of people like to talk about the gun violence and when they took up. But during that time, when that was going on, they had the best birthdays, the best Thanksgivings, the best birthday parties for their kids and whatnot. I really didn't detect violence out that time while we was on the street collecting data. So, and then let's just talk about like capitalism in America and me growing up as a child and I'm viewing American cinemas or TV and materialistic is huge. Diamonds, jewelry is huge. So bags, all this. So we see this. We live in New York, Park Ave. Like we see this on TV. It's definitely in our culture, especially in hip hop alone. That is what we strive for, right? Financial freedom. So that changed their mindset on how they view money now, right? And how to get that access to that. When you're talking about again, this program. Yeah, something.
Oh, that's good.
And we're looking at how much they paying these kids and the conditions that they're living in. That's nothing to them, especially what they just came up out of.
Thank you.
When we're talking about like, all right, why don't go to school and get you a good job? But that's time when we're talking about when we're hungry right now. When sis need this right now, or mom needs this because mom doing this right now, daddy gone. School ain't really rocking. And how I'm hearing school ain't really paying off for the ones who got degrees. So I'm gonna go get what I need to get right now to pay to keep this roof over my head for now, so I can help my moms out, my little brother and stuff. And we know these different situations in these types of projects. So yeah, when we talk about, of course, yes, Mayor put out all these jobs, but it's like how much you paying them on that? Is that covering basic living needs just in New York City alone? We know that. We just read something out on Buzz for just living in New York. If you're not making 100 grand, you're struggling. You're struggling straight like that. So just understanding that and looking at it in a different perspective. And then you could talk about and look for other solutions instead of playing the criminalized thing.
And one thing from my era, again, that we had Job Corps. And I do appreciate Job Corps because it was a way for you who didn't want to go to college to learn with their hands. A lot of people, they already got it. They already got it in their brain. They're visionaries, they're creatives, but we're forcing them in these boxes. And nobody's really looking at the assessment of these young men and seeing what they're really good at and promoting that. You know what I'm saying? And you could do more than one thing. Everybody want to put you in a box and say you can only be this. No, you could be whatever you want to be, and you could change anytime you want to change. It's all about changing. That's what life is learning new stuff. But we're not given that opportunity, not only from people on the outside, but from the inside. As a person who only has a GED, I feel like a lot of times people judge you as you're too smart for your hood. And a lot of it is coming from your hood. It's coming from the people that you hanging out with. We should be promoting that. We should be promoting people who are doing excellence, whether it's they want to be an attorney, a doctor. We have to start promoting that in our community. That's where these people come from. Writers, basketball stars. There are so many talented people across public housing, but we keep playing this old fiddles, slow drag song when we know what it takes. It takes us to mentor each other and to see the resources that we need on the ground. And that's why I do appreciate being on the ground and having partners like I have here in Red Hook. We built Red Hook strong in the way that we collaborate and have social cohesion across this community. And so that's how you see us sitting here today, is because we took the time over decades. This doesn't happen overnight. You're not gonna build a strong team in 2 weeks. We've been building that team across Red Hook. We stay in touch with our elected officials. We question what we don't like, right? So we're here today to say that we just watched all these jobs right in our backyard in Red Hook that are in construction. A lot of times, if they went for the job, they got sent someplace else, the Bronx, to work. It's hard to commute, and a lot of people didn't have an opportunity to commute during the pandemic to go to those jobs in the Bronx. They didn't let them work right here in Red Hook. Right here in Red Hook, with all the money floating around Red Hook with resiliency. Let's keep it real. So, you know, there are things in Section 3 that are requiring that people get training in Red Hook. We in an industrial zone. Who has industrial training? What training is that? What is that? What's manufacturing training? You know, entrepreneurial. Don't drop us as soon as we get our 501c3 or our LLC. We need help throughout the process, you know, and that's where we need stronger support.
I'll pass this to you. Can I just have
No,
30
yeah.
seconds? I just want to respond quickly to the PPP loans because I think it is also relevant to like the, you know, criminalization of like, you know, for Black men, right? You know, and the interesting point of that is like, you know, when businesses also took those, you know, well-established businesses took those PPP loans, it was very easy for them to be forgiven for their loans. And then you see now, right, like everybody who's taken a PPP loan is publicized. right? So then, like, it's very easy to track them. The next thing is, I'll just say this really quickly, like, I believe that there's great programming across the city. That's not the issue, and we can continue, pushing that, right, and coming up with creative ways to attract talent or to attract clients, attract participants. But that's not gonna change until we get trust, right? Like community trust, like real trust, because just speaking for young adults, I work with 16 to 24 hours at work. We have a real issue with recruiting people. And I think that's because of a lack of trust and a lack of confidence. We're not able to reach people. So we really need to start there, and it comes directly with funding, right? Like you can't have big a pie and then give it to people, because you might as well not give me the pie at all. And a lot of our young people feel like that. But
those are touch on so many things. It feels like there's this theme that the policy apparatus it has this career path or these career paths that can be taken, and that there seems to be a mismatch in how it's bringing in the people who need it the most. Really interested in hearing, like, what's the demographic, what does it look like to be out of school, out of work youth today? Like, what is that like? What are they going through? What are the problems they're going through that make it difficult to translate into these career paths that people want? I don't know who want to take that.
do I want to keep going in order?
Whatever.
All right.
I'm sorry, restate the question again? Restate the question again?
Oh, just on out of school, out of work youth, what does it look like to be living that experience today in New York City and the obstacles that they're facing?
I would say like, from like my experience, and also I can speak from like research data as well, like, I feel like nobody cared. Like, school is, again, like what I was talking about earlier, it's like the reality is of like home and then your community, and those what you're dealing with right now, right in the moment. How school is set up, and how I'm gonna speak from their point of view, and how schools is different here, like private schools versus public schools. Like they have knowledge of this, and they question this alone, let alone they question things, but it's question to themselves. Like nobody has taught our kids how to really communicate, how to be vulnerable and ask these things. It's coming from a fear base, mostly of like them not knowing the unknown. And that's fear, not knowing the unknown, not knowing if I'm smart enough to even get through this. Right? Do I even have the time to even get through this right now, let alone like what I'm dealing with at home? Do I want to go to school and go through these projects and go through the bullshit on my way to school, right? And let alone got to go through that same bullshit on the way home. And we're talking about, we know that these projects have different gangs in there, right? And how they play huge in NYCHA across the city, right? And effect on things that what we're talking about here. I think like our research, which you really brought me in, speaks highly to that, right? Because it's their voices that's saying what's going on. So you can hear that. The question that you're asking will always be until we really go to the project and ask them that. So again, like when I'm talking about like the crowd here, like these type of things will always be if they're not a part of it. You're not gonna find those solutions. So how you gonna diagnose the problem? You don't even hear the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's my issue too in this work. A lot of people like in power who sets these things up like to assume what they think is going on. And it's so not what you think it is.
Yeah, can I say something? I think what we're both saying is, number one, our reality every day is always crisis mode. It's always, something happens. Whether it's family, whether it's the way you gotta walk through your project hallway through broken, tiles, disrepair in the apartment. Some people have food insecurities. It's just so much going on. And then on top of that, the pandemic. So a lot of people started staying in. And I think it really did, to me, in my opinion, affect a lot of young male. That they just prefer to be inside playing on their games or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Rather than go outside and go through what they've always went through, which was in some cases, stop and frisk, other cases, you in the wrong neighborhood, somebody watching you in the store. So the pandemic in some ways increased the problem because it gave them a break where they were able to sit inside. And so that it introverted them even more. So that's trauma, in my opinion. The first thing you gotta do is start fixing where they live. And they gotta fix it. Not of bringing in everybody else to fix it. But that's also a challenge because we're not accepting the way they want to fix it. We're not really accepting to hear what they're saying. So where's the trust that he's talking about? It starts with what you see. You know, you gotta see it somewhere in your heart, in your mind, or in front of you. And we're not seeing anything that's changing any policy or any numbers in regards to the jobs and the plight of public housing residents.
I'll say this too, like. When we're talking about like this mindset generation, because each, especially like in the streets and how culture, Black culture, that changes. It changes. I'm talking about clothes, image, how you come in everywhere. So when we talk about these kids today, like, I understand what you're talking about, like trust. But for me, to even get there is relationship building, right? And then to even get there, for me to even relationship build, do I even look the part? For him to even waste his time to even conversate with me. That's what you gotta understand, these kids looking at you. Do you even look like where I come from? And do you even look like you're even doing something for me to even hear you right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna respond to that, and then I want to say my original thought, because I think that's really important, right? Like, you know, the bottom line when it comes to like relationship building, like we all know as like, you know, people who service our communities, is that relationship building is essential. And that cultivation takes time, because you're dealing with unraveling like a whole bunch of trauma, right? And then getting someone to like trust one person. But, you know, the demands, right, or the outcomes, it's like, all right, get a job, right? People in training, when we know that there's skill gaps across the board, there's coachability issues. There's so much across the board where we are carefully trying to develop that while still trying to meet the demands of our funders, right? And then when that turnout doesn't come out, then it's like, oh, see, it's not working. It's a failed policy, it's a failed program, where that's just not fair. You know, and then just to speak to like, you know, because I also just want to like frame it for like, this is about Black men right now, right? Black youth, Black young adults. You know, I think it's not like this different generation. Yeah, there's certain things that we might have experienced that this younger generation doesn't, but it's still the same, right? And when you're in a Black male body, right? Like people are afraid of you, right? Like that, for the earliest memory, like there's some sort of fear. You don't know what that is. As you get older, then you realize, and then what happens? You're also afraid, right? And it's not just like our counterparts, it's not just like, you know, a different race, it's everyone. It's your teacher, it's your colleagues, it's your friends, it's everyone. So when you're thinking about a Black, like, and you see these numbers like, oh yeah, Black males in particular are disproportionately more unemployed than everybody else, it's because there's a bias that's just there and that lives on. Like you learn as an adult later on, right? That like, all right, yeah, the world literally doesn't care about my problems. A Black boy, a Black man, a Black child, they learn that as soon as you're looked at as a problem, because people already give up on you.
Yeah.
I feel like, sort of start to touch on this. I think since we, in the report, one of the craziest things we found was that, there's only 35% of police precincts that have a lot of NYCHA developments in them, 5 or more. Those make up half of all the stop and frisks in the city. So there's an over policing with NYCHA, and it primarily is around Black and brown men. And this is sort of in the same cauldron of, like, the administration has started this quality of life enforcement initiative. So there's like a 6-fold increase in criminal summonses for very small, minor things that before were just a citation. I want to specifically, it was amazing to see, I've seen organization, the Center for Innovation Justice, this report. It was the first time I ever seen someone go to people who are literally out there in the middle of it, just young people on the streets, and saying, asking just basic questions about, like, things that no one ever asked before. One of the things was like, why are you carrying? I've never heard any researcher ask a young person that. What's going on in your life right now? And I really would like, it would be great to hear some of, like, the findings, and I know they've done research since, some of the findings on that. And then also, Karen touched on the Section 3 program a little bit. We know that NYCHA is going to be having a lot of construction with the trust. They're trying to really ramp up the rehab to a lot of developments. Like, what should we be thinking about in terms of fixing what the Section 3 program is right now? And I think you've already mentioned some of them. We start with just those 2 things.
So some of the things that we are looking at when it comes to Section 3 is they were changing the rules from 30% of new hire to labor hours. I don't know where that's at in regards to if that legislation has passed. When you deal with public housing, you have HUD, federal regulations, and then you have state legislation, then you have local laws. There's one thing piled up against the other without any synchronicity between these parties. Make sure that whatever money's getting sent down by HUD is actually being used properly, so that if there is a need for a specific type of worker in a community, like we're a resilient community. So we talk a lot about readying our shorelines and things like that, going to new types of energy use away from fossil fuels. But what are we doing in regards to training and youth in public housing in Section 3 to start really making sure that those trainings are going on, not just in high school, that's a minimum to be in high school, but also back in, junior high and even grade school. In Red Hook, our young people, our grade school are learning about climate change in this area. They're learning about the plight of public housing residents in regards to the indoor environment. When we talk about remediating lead or even mold, something that's gonna come back as we go through these climate events that we've just experienced in the last few days in New York, where a lot of basements got soaked, including in public housing. Those basements, fortunately, we are working on resiliency to keep that water out in these areas. And so, but what about other areas? It's not just about the development. We're a whole community here. So we care about not just public housing, but our entire community. And we should be able to do the work that's needed in Red Hook to take care of Red Hook so that it cuts down the time that we need to actually answer any crisis. When it came to that smoke coming across from Canada, we're starting to see visually what climate change can do. We need to be ready in places like Red Hook which is very close to Governor's Island. We have to start supporting that exchange where we could start utilizing these spaces to train people on what they're gonna need in the future in regards to what kind of energy and built environment we're gonna need. So,
The one thing I'll say about Reese, section 3, and Reese in particular is like, even just, well, I work here at NYCHA for 4 years. It's been very difficult to get in contact with someone there to bring the services here, right? And, you know, I get that, like, that program is, you know, there's a need for it to be invested in more. You know, we're not even in there though, right? Like that, you know, I looked at that, according to the website, that it was, you know, updated as of last year in 2022. But one thing I will say from the perspective of like workforce development, and to seeing the results from the entrepreneurship program at NYCHA, where there was like an increase in you know, self-employed folks, right, 472%. Like, I think that goes right on the line of what we do. Yeah, where, you know, we use project-based learning and, you know, entrepreneurship as a tool, right, to get people invested in learning about, you know, what it is that they want to do with themselves, and more importantly, like them having agency over what it is that they're in control of, right? Because I think there's a conversation where we're constantly like, let's get them employed, let's get them employed. And, you know, we're talking to a lot of these hiring managers or these companies, and, you know, the reality again, right? And thinking about Black males, they don't fit the cultural norms, they don't fit the cultural expectations, and it's not, there's not enough professional development that we can give without like having someone compromise who they are. And I think that's really important for the young adult, right? It's to be able to be comfortable with who they are. And if that means that we need to develop our own businesses and localize our own economy to do that. And it seems to be a proven method here. Like, I would love to see, you know, the kind of revenue that's being generated, you know, through these businesses, because I think this is like a start of something really good and sustainable, friendly, for the community.
Hear a lot like about employment, right? And job training skills and all that, but. And I'm talking about experience of hiring young guys straight off the street and bringing them right into the work of research and trying to teach them different type of methods and let them take that and go back on the street with it. Even though these young men was working in their very own neighborhood, asking questions to the very own people who they have strong, long relationships with. All the skills and training that we could give them. And it's hard for them to be effective in that because of what they're dealing with every day in their reality, such as the traumas, right? Those have to even be addressed.
yeah,
Those have to be worked out for them even to sit in a space like this. And even when they're in spaces in an environment like this, feeling like they belong in these, right? Not they mark their lives out, or because society, since America has been in existence, told them that they're not, generationally, over and over again. Like, I don't even supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Society says that I'm not supposed to be up here because I'm a big home blood, and the things I've done don't make me supposed to be here. Understand? Well, I belong here, right?
Exactly.
Telling the story. So me being an example, like young guys like this, that y'all belong here and y'all supposed to really have the mic talking. Right, that's huge, right? Before we can even suggest anything. Because I'm talking about generational, like I'm talking about how to engage them, like. Yeah, it's all the same, but like what's currently happening in the culture as far as music, painting, dressing, everything. You don't understand that? You don't understand how drill has changed the culture or how you talk about everything in gangbang. Like, if you don't understand these complex dynamics that plays on young men, each generation, you're not gonna find no place to like really engage them and have real conversation for them to be, or create a safe space for them to be vulnerable, to have that conversation on what they're dealing with them.
That is, you know, that's amazing, because I did do a program with public housing where, we invited a brother who wrote a book. It was called, Conversation with a Killer. And we invited, Deshaun Kenna, because, not because of that part about him, but his redemption. He wrote like 2 other like guidebooks about 12 paths to power. And he really was able to speak to his own experience, but the thing was, we stayed out of the room too. So as a woman and as a president of Red Hook West, we gave space for the young brothers to sit in that room by themselves and feel safe. We still provided for them space to look at each other and just examine, like, our residents, the residents in Red Hook. I live around my residents for 40 years, and I've known them for 40 years, but there's so much we don't know about each other, like our skill set, what we're good at, what we need help with, you know. And so we're still disorientated in America as the remnants of the Black migration that came here and found ourselves now in these public housing campuses. That's nothing to be ashamed of, but we are still disorientated after the time that we have so-called been free in America, and that's a problem.
I want to say this, when you do get to a position where you're capable of being in a space to be able to learn, right? These different types of skill sets to be able to, it doesn't matter if it's the for-profit sector or the public sector, right? So,
Good talk.
we'll
We'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can say one.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
When you do have that mindset and you're able to even take the train and show up to work, right? For us, we talk about being marginalized, right? We know that how that works in America, right? It's all about who you know. So like when it is in there, who opened the door for them at the end of the day? When they get in that position or they have reached that tier, whatnot, who's opening the door for them, right? Because we definitely not in the position to open the door. We're trying to kick the door, and so we can let them in the door. Like, that's my goal right now. But like, somebody had to open up the door for me though. Sit at that table right there. That's my girl, Lisa White over there. Because I couldn't be here or doing the research that I didn't do if she didn't invest in me or try to understand me. Meaning that she came to the block, she came to Crown, she came and met the gang and everything, and built relationships with her, with her own, right? And started to understand those kids and those minds and how that works, right? So now she can open up more things and know how to operate from, this is what's really happening, not what we hope was happening. And then what seems to vouch for that. Now we can talk about different things or different solutions now that we can apply. But then those solutions have to be applied quickly. Because the streets only change again, a whole nother generation in only 5-6 years. And how they viewing things. And if you see this when we get angry Black men, predator, whatnot, you got angry Black men because of the lack of opportunity. If I'm living in the projects, you know what you just broke down about the projects. And then you're trying to force me to go to school, so I gotta deal with the gang mixing and the territorial thing while I'm going to school. Mom is struggling. Yeah. 30, and of course I'm angry. Of course I'm upset. Of course I'm gonna do something to get some money real quick. Legal or illegal, however fast it's coming in. And if you don't understand that, come on.
Yeah, exactly, that part.
Yeah, it's, You know, because it's not to even like, you know, try to top that or anything, but, you know, just making me think about like this criminalization in general. You know, even today, you know, I saw a young person walking to the train station and they asked the police officer, can they get on? I watched them explain, hey, I just got my job this week. I don't have a paycheck. We've all been there, right? And the first thing the cop said is, let me see the ID. You have an ID? So in my mind, it's like, you gonna run a background check and already like there's policies that protect the police and, you know, criminalize young people. Because what if he did have a warrant, right? What if he did have something on his record to give him justification to then bring him in to find out something more, right? So we really need to like, you know, and looking at like police and their tactics is like, that's something to like evaluate. You know, so I spent
Also, to that, can I take that?
Yeah.
real quick? The psychological effect of that, right? Now it's like, even for stop and frisk, we experienced that or whatnot. Knowing like this is my neighborhood, I grew up here, you know, changed like every 5-6 years, but it's hopping out on me. So now like if no therapy or no mediation coming in or nobody's breaking that down to me or whatnot, I'm always questioning who I am. And who I am in America, who I am as a Black person here. Like, how do I fit in society, right? Alone, like, they're doing that alone on top of all the other things. So this, I think here is just having those conversations and really talking about what they really dealing with. And then you'll understand the behavior or the decision making.
facts.
I think we're a little over time, but I think it was, you know, well worth it. Just want to please give a round of applause to the panelists. The conversation is not yet over. We want to switch to the small breakout group sessions to start now. I think Catherine. Mike?
Can I say one more
Oh,
thing? This,
one more.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. So this definitely shout out Nellis, right? She was literally like my first job, my first program. You guys are this crazy. First job, gave me a chance, and I know who I was, and that's that type of work. So it's reflected in your now. So that's excellent.